Sporting my brand new Make America Great Again hat. Real fancy one. Thanks to Rod Squad fan Dean for dropping one by. This is the Rod Arquette Show here on this Monday in Utah's Talk Radio 105.9 KNRS. Listen and you'll know. All right. I don't think this was much of a surprise, to be real honest. The U.S. Supreme Court today decided not to hear a case involving Senate Bill 54, which was a result of the Count My Vote effort here in the state of Utah. The 10th Circuit Court had rejected an appeal by the GOP calling for the law to be struck down. They rejected it. The backers of the caucus convention system decided to take the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, hoping that they would give it a hearing. And the High Court announced today that they would not consider it. So they didn't rule for or against it. They just basically said, we aren't going to take it. Well, I had a chance a short time ago to talk with Phill Wright with Keep My Voice. He's been actively involved in this effort. He came by the studio earlier today and asked him, first of all, if he thought the effort against SB 54 and Count My Vote was worth it.
Well, I will always say that freedom is always worth fighting for. And I want to remind people, the U.S. Supreme Court did not rule on this case. They chose not to hear the case. So there's a big difference between them choosing not to hear the case and ruling in favor of SB 54. They did not. They get about 7,500 requests every year, and they can only choose about 200. So it's a numbers game, and I think we lost in the numbers game.
Were you somewhat expecting it? I mean, you knew it was a shot in the dark, maybe, with the number of cases that they're requested to hear all the time. Phil, what do you think?
Well, obviously we were optimistic, and
Sure.
If I have a choice between good and bad, I'm going to choose good. I'm going to be optimistic. I will say I'm not surprised, because either way, we knew it was a long shot. We knew it was going to be hard to be heard. It's disappointing that they chose not to hear the case, but it's not the end. You know, people have said to me so many times over the years, why do you keep fighting? And it's just because if you believe in something, if you're passionate about it, especially if it's a constitutional thing, I'm going to fight as long as there's breath in my lungs, because that's how I was raised. And I think most people who understand the issue of SB 54, they understand this goes far beyond the Utah Republican Party. I had the opportunity working with Keep My Voice. We contacted every major political party in all 50 states. I met with the chair of the National Green Party back east, and they understood that this constitutional issue, because of the precedence that was set in the 10th Circuit, impacts all political parties. It impacts all private businesses. I had the opportunity to fly to Houston, and I met with the director of the U.S. Pastor Council. Now, this is a religious organization. They filed an amicus brief in support of hearing this, because they understand that because the 10th Circuit Court upheld SB 54, what they in fact said is that it's okay for a government to dictate the terms under which a private organization chooses its leadership. So that has a huge impact on churches.
Yeah, sure does.
So that's why the U.S. Pastor Council got involved. We had over 8 amicus briefs from organizations all over the country who understand the negative impact the ruling of the 10th Circuit has had.
Take us back 5 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer than that.
Okay.
When this started bubbling up, Phil, what were your thoughts? What were you starting to hear from people on this?
Well, I'm a California transplant. I'm from California. So I was raised in a political atmosphere, being a Republican, where my vote didn't count. I never met my state legislators, never met the governor, lieutenant governor, never met any of those people, because I never had the opportunity to be involved in the process, because the process in California is all about money and name recognition. So then in 97, when I moved to Utah and discovered this incredible thing we have, the caucus system, I got involved, and I was blown away by the idea that my vote truly counts in Utah because of our caucus system. I was elected as a county delegate, then a state delegate, and had the opportunity to actually meet with the people who wanted to represent my party, the Republican Party, and vet them. So I've always valued that in the state of Utah. So back in 2013, when the Count My Vote initiative first came on the scene, everybody knows, if they're honest, they know why Count My Vote came about. It had to do with this senator named Mike Lee, who ultimately took the seat of Bob Bennett.
Yeah, and I've asked people that question so many times, and they deny it, and they deny it, and they deny it. But you can, it's as plain
exactly
as blown on your face. Yeah.
That's when former Governor Levitt got involved and created the Count My Vote initiative, because they were terrified that those who actually support our conservative platform are going to continue to get elected, people like Mike Lee. Now, remember, Mike Lee did not win at convention. He came in number 2.
Yeah.
But I've always believed I don't have a problem with a primary as long as the parties are able to vet their candidates. If they can't choose by at least a 60% margin on which candidate they want, then they send their top 2 to the primary. And that's what we did with Mike Lee. He came in 2, but he won in the primary. So we've never been against, those of us who support the caucus, we're not against primaries. As a matter of fact, primaries happen more often than they don't.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure that Republicans have the ability to vet their candidates and figure out those who we believe will best articulate our message as contained in our platform.
Phil, were you surprised that this caused a split within the Republican Party the way this fight has, or do you think there is a split?
I reject the idea that there's a split in the party. People who understand our caucus system, who understand what it does for freedom, are 100% behind it. You know, the Count My Vote people, they were always releasing these polls saying things like 70% of Utahns support the Count My Vote and to end the caucus system. Here's my question. If that's the case, and we have over 700,000 Republicans in the state of Utah, how come Count My Vote didn't have at least 400,000 or 500,000 of them sign their initiative?
Mm-hmm.
Not only did that not happen, but when Keep My Voice started going door to door, our figures show that over 60% of the people that we were able to talk to, people who signed the Count My Vote initiative, said, "Oh my goodness, that is not what I wanted," and they removed their signature.
Yeah.
So where are those 70% of Utahns who want to do away with the caucus system? They do not exist. That was nothing more than purchased propaganda from Count My Vote.
Final question. Where the future of the caucus convention system? As you know, I am a strong believer in it. I've had the chance to be both a state and county delegate. You and I have run into each other on many occasions on this. Where do we go from here? I'm confident it stays and it stands, and it's still an important part of Utah's political system. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And I just remind people, people look at this as a huge loss for the Utah Republican Party. And I've thought a lot about this. And, you know, the greatest victories in this country have been won. Very rarely are they won with one battle. Washington had 17 battles during the Revolutionary War. He only won 6 of them. But those he won were the ones that counted. So I tell people, don't give up. This is not the end of the war. It's a skirmish that didn't turn out the way we wanted, but we need to continue to fight for freedom and for the voice of the individual, and that's what the caucus system does.
And I'm with Phil. I sure do agree with Phil on that. He stopped by our studio a short time ago for this interview to talk about the Supreme Court's decision not to take up the case concerning SB 54 and Count My Vote. And it probably from a legal point of view, at least going through the courts, legislatively, I think they're going to try and do something, and I think they should. But through the court process, at least for now, it is kind of done and over as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as a lot of people are concerned, but there's still some legislative battles to fight. Now, when we come back, as we talked about it with Phil, a lot of money has been spent on this. There's been, quote, a split within the Republican Party, even though I don't know if that's true. It may be. But I want to get your reaction. Was this fight worth it to save the caucus convention system? I'm a big believer in it. I've been a county delegate. I've been a state delegate. I can see the beauty of the caucus convention system, and I hope it remains alive and very healthy here in the state of Utah. And I want to see if you agree or if you think the fight was worth it. 888-570-8010, 888-570-8010, or on your cell phone, all you do is have to dial pound 250 and say, "Hey, Rod." Right now we're talking about the Supreme Court today ending the 5-year legal battle going on in the state over the SB 54 and the Count My Vote initiative. And my question is to you, was it worth it? I think it was. I think the caucus convention system, which I've been able to get involved in the last 10 years, is a wonderful, wonderful system. And it is a way to really select the candidates who represent the views of the Utah Republican Party. That's what it's all about. 888-570-8010 on your cell phone. Dial pound 250 and say, hey, Rod. Let's go to the phones and talk with Rob in Highland. Hi, Rob. How are you? And welcome to the show.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. What do you think of this, Rob?
I think it's definitely worth that we've made. Every Republican that I know that really understands what's going on is in favor for the caucus system. And I'll tell you, before I ever got involved, the first time I went to a caucus meeting, I came away just inspired, saying, this is the first good thing I've seen in politics in my entire life. This is a wonderful thing. And I was able to become a delegate, worked hard to research into all the candidates, and came away from it feeling great about the whole system, thinking this is a wonderful thing. And when I saw how when Bennett lost to Mike Lee, I thought this caucus system is working great because we got a candidate that really stands for the values of the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I saw KSL and Doug Wright start saying the caucus system is sick.
Oh, yeah.
The Republican Party is sick.
Yep.
And only later on did I find out that there was a group that got together at the Alta Club to try to decide how to destroy it, because it really made it so that the establishment didn't have as much power as they had before. It was putting power in the people. And the establishment can't stand to have power in the people, so they had to destroy it. And they got together at the Alta Club and planned how to do it, and SB 54 was born.
Yeah, and fortunately, the caucus system is still around, and I hope it never goes away, because it serves a valuable purpose here in the state of Utah. Let's go to Grantsville and talk with Joe. Hi, Joe.
I'm actually a state delegate.
Uh-huh.
I agree to some extent, but I disagree after my experience with this last one. I don't understand. First of all, I go to my caucus meeting, and you have less than 20 people show up, and there's over 1,000 people in the district. And I'm trying to find out who my people in the district would actually want me to vote for. And I have no way to find that out. So I'm essentially going and voting for myself. And I would have to think that a lot of people who are involved in the caucus, that's what they're doing. They're going and voting for who they want, not who their district wants. And I think I saw that at this last convention. When you have a candidate lose by 2 percentage points at the convention, but then win by a mass majority in the primary, when that's the Republican Party that's voting for him, that shows that the caucus isn't, in my opinion, representing the will of the people. Now, I don't blame the caucus. I blame the people for not getting involved in their local caucuses and getting the word out. And then another interesting thing that I found out when I went to one of the candidates' little town halls, and I asked a question. I said, how is it this bill doesn't make any sense to me, because it's the Republican Party essentially that voted for this, and the Republican Party has a super majority, and then it's the Republican Party that's essentially suing to get this thing overturned. And I'm going, wait a minute, so we're suing ourselves, essentially. And if the people are that against it, they're going to vote these people out. So at the end of the day, it all comes back down to the individual. We're fighting over a caucus. We're fighting over people getting put on a ballot through signatures and everything. And somebody said to me, well, that means a Democrat can have a say in who we get on there. I said, yeah, they can have a say who's on the ballot, but at the end of the day, it's the Republican Party who votes for the candidate. So if the Republican Party is not getting involved at the local level, learning about who these candidates are, we essentially, as individual citizens, are ceding the power to the caucus then. So,
I see where you're coming from on that, and I agree with you, Joe. You've got to turn out for this. Now, I don't agree with you that, one person is really deciding. There are people at that caucus, and if you're selected as a delegate, it's your responsibility to get out and find out what they think about it, in my opinion, Joe. Isn't it?
Agree.
Isn't it?
I do agree with that. But then I reached out to my party to try and get a mailing list to try and find out how can I contact them. The only way I could get contact with the people in my district was essentially going door to door.
Yeah, and that's the party's fault. That's the party's fault.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Joe. The party has got to help these delegates. They've got to help the delegates find out who the Republicans are within their precinct, and then give those delegates a chance to go out and talk to people. But first and foremost, you have to show up at the meeting. It's critical. Don't waste that chance to do that, because it's a marvelous opportunity. And unfortunately, I think in some cases, there are voters out there, and this is where the SB 54 supporters and the Count My Vote supporters know that there are voters out there who are lazy. And if you just throw a lot of money through TV commercials and a really good 30-second commercial, you'll convince them that you're the person who should be elected. And none of them question where you stand on anything. And that's what the caucus convention system did. It raised questions. It asked people where they stand. Because these delegates would meet with these candidates would have to meet with the delegates, and they would have to explain their positions. That's why it's so important. All right, more of your calls coming up. 888-570-8010, 888-570-8010, or on your cell phone, dial pound 250 and say, hey, Rod. The U.S. Supreme Court today rejected the idea of hearing the case. This involves a lawsuit involving SB 54 and its constitutionality as to whether or not the state can tell a private organization, meaning the Republican Party, how to conduct their nominating process. The court didn't reject it today. They just decided not to hear the case. So does that end the legal battles? And was the 5-year fight worth it? I say it was. Let's go to the phones and see what you have to say. Let's go to Davis County and talk with Tina tonight. Hi, Tina. How are you? And welcome to the show.
I'm good, Rod. How are you doing?
I'm great. What do you think of this, Tina?
Well, I was certainly disappointed when I heard the news this morning, that's to be sure. However, I have not lost hope, and I'm definitely don't think it was not worth fighting for, and nor am I going to quit fighting at this point. The caucus system is the only way that we can protect the values that we hold dear in Utah, because it's the only way we can make sure that we get real Republicans on the ballot. And it's the only way that we can make sure we hold our elected officials accountable to the platforms and the beliefs of the Republican Party. I actually was in communication with Senator Lee this morning, and he told me that it doesn't mean the fight's over. We need to turn to the legislature. We need to make sure that they correct this unconstitutional law. And that's what he said, it was unconstitutional, which we all know to be true.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Tina. I think you have to go through the legislative process. That's got to be the directive, I think, in my opinion, to get this thing changed. Let's go back to the phones and talk with Kirk in Salt Lake City. Kirk, how are you? And welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm doing great.
Good.
I'm a big fan of the caucus system as well. And a caller earlier was talking a little bit about how he tried to represent the people. And I think that's true to a point. But in a republic, we're not a democracy. We're a republic. And along with your comments, because I've been a state delegate for many, many years, and my job is to represent my district, but my number one job is to represent the party platform, or if I'm an elected leader, it's to represent the Constitution. And if all my delegates or if all my constituents, want me to go against the Constitution, I still have a duty to stand up and defend the Constitution or the Republican Party platform.
You do. You're right.
And that's the whole beauty of a republic. And even like his comment with Mitt Romney, had Mitt Romney gone through the delegate system, he would have been kicked out. And if the voters would have done any research like the delegates did, my opinion is Mitt Romney never would have been elected, because they do no research, they put no effort, they just believe that little sound bites, and they
name
vote
recognition.
for him.
Name recognition has a lot to do with it as well, Kirk. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we'll see. As Tina said, it's got to now. You've got to turn to your state lawmakers and ask them what they're going to do with SB 54. That has to be the next step.
One man, one goal. Yeah, one vision.
The Rod Arquette Show on Talk Radio 105.9 KNRS.